Welcome back to Everything Outdoors. Today I'm going to cover the 20-hour service of my F6 SMHA in 10 minutes or less. Here we go. I'll start with the lower gear case oil change. Yamaha recommends Yamalube Marine Gear Case Lube or Hypod Oil, SAE 90 weight. I have a suitable drain pan ready to go, and make sure that the motor is in the upright position, not tilted. Start by removing the lower drain bolt, set aside. The oil should be held in by vacuum. Now, loosen and remove the upper bolt. Be sure to get the right bolt. The other one is to flush the motor after saltwater use. Oil should now run freely into your pan. Yamaha recommends running the motor for 5 to 10 minutes to warm up both the gear case oil as well as the engine oil, as it runs more freely if you do this. I didn't do this, as I left both the gear case and engine oil draining whilst I went down to my local marine store to get the new oil and gaskets. Drain time was over an hour. Be sure to inspect the old oil. If it's milky, it may contain water, and if there's metal shavings in the oil, this could mean that you have corrosion or excessive wear going on in the gear case. Speak to your local dealer if this is the case. Inspect the sacrificial anode periodically, especially when servicing. It's normal for this plate to wear. It sacrifices itself instead of your outboard's components corroding each other through electrolytic action. If you see excessive wear or corrosion, contact your nearest dealer and replace it immediately. Install your new washers on your existing drain bolts with a light rub of oil. Using a flexible hose or bottle and spout design like I'm using, you can pick up these spouts from your local boat shop. Inject the oil up into the gear case from the lower drain hole. When you see the oil coming out of the top hole, stop, insert the fill level plug with the new gasket. Always start turning by hand before you use any excessive force. Once you've snugged the top bolt up, now install the lower plug with the new gasket, quickly transferring from the nozzle to the drain bolt. Your F6 should take 0.1 liters of oil, and this applies to an F4 as well. Moving on to the oil change. As mentioned before, run the motor for 5 minutes or so to warm the engine oil. Ensure that your motor is on a stand like mine. Remove the cowling cover and set aside carefully. Coming back to the motor, here we have the fuel filter. Now in the 20-hour service, Yamaha does not recommend replacing this fuel filter, although it's fairly simple. It's held in with this plastic clip and a metal retaining ring. Coming around to the other side, we have the oil filler cap, your sight glass. Now you shouldn't see any oil in the sight glass when it's sitting idle, but when it's running, you want to make sure that the oil is flowing. Make sure your motor is as level as possible. This is critical, else you may get a wrong read on your dipstick once you've replaced the oil. Next, remove the oil filler cap and set aside. Prepare your drain pan and loosen the drain bolt and washer to allow the oil to drain into the pan completely, usually for a few minutes. As you can see, this oil is pretty black and dirty and needed to be changed. Apply a light coat of oil to the washer and the bolt, and insert the bolt and the washer as it seats up against the housing. Then tighten a quarter to a half turn more as the aluminum washer crushes itself down. When it snugs right up, stop. If you have access to a torque wrench, use it. I didn't have a torque wrench, as I've never had an issue with mine, but be careful not to over-tighten, as you could strip the threads. You could also use an oil change pump to draw the oil up via the fill port as opposed to draining via the plug, saving you that step. I was going to do this, but my dealer was out of the pumps. Add the correct amount of engine oil, that's 0.6 liters on this motor, via the filler hole. Careful not to overfill, as it can be a pain to drain some. I aim for the middle of the markings on the dipstick. Insert the dipstick completely, wind it all the way down, come back 5 minutes later to check your marking. As you can see here, I'm about 1/8 of an inch above the lower mark, so I'll add a little more. At the 20-hour service, Yamaha recommends checking the spark plug lead. So all I do is basically disconnect, pop the plug off. There's some grease on there, just to ensure nothing is wrong. This motor is practically brand new, so it's in very good condition. I then pop the lead back onto the plug. And when you push the end of the plug, you should hear a snap. Moving on to the grease points, the transom clamp screws here don't have much by way of grease, so I'll have to add some to those. Be sure to add some grease to the throttle cable. Mine still has a fair amount. Coming down the shaft of the motor, here we have the swivel torque screw. There's still a fair amount of grease on mine. The prop splines will have to be greased. So we disconnect this pin, wind off the bolt, take the washer off, remove the prop, and you can grease the splines. It's also a good time to check the washer for the gear case lube. Tiller throttle cable, add some grease to that. And once you've performed your changes and sealed everything back up, tilt the motor up and check the tilt hinge joint. Here's the old oil, and these are the 2 lubricants we used in today's service. Other things to inspect as recommended by Yamaha is the fuel line inspection, fuel or engine leakage inspection, basic connector and lead connectors inspection, ground leads, electrical connectors. Other things that I'll check when I next make it out onto the water is the gear shift linkage, engine starting condition, engine idle noise, cooling water leakage, cooling water inspection, and the stop kill switch inspection. As you can see, there's quite a bit to the 20-hour service. If you're going to do anything, ensure that you change your oils. Your motor will thank you for this. And let's be honest, who wants to break down on the water? Happy boating, everyone!